is trading number one. Doesn't want to trade number one. And Utah, I don't think, is interested in trading up to number one. But would Danny Ainge and his son Austin, who run the team, would they consider moving back if they think they can get a player if they go back one spot or two? And the team I think we should keep an eye on in the top five is the Clippers. The Clippers have the fifth pick. The top four players are sort of, given top standing.
All right.
If there's a pick that could move in that top five, I think the LA Clippers pick is one that we should keep an eye on if there's anything fungible. So that's something to keep an eye on going into the next week.
And talking to folks around the league, it certainly feels like after or around 5 is when we could start see picks flying around. But I kind of think of this as a game of Jenga. And there's one big piece that if you pull it out, then the entire tower starts to fall, and that is Giannis Antetokounmpo. Not just Brian, because of course we've been talking for months about what the decision is going to be with Giannis and the Milwaukee Bucks, but how that actually affects the way teams want to move around and picks fly around in this draft, right?
Yeah, one of the reasons why the league is a little bit frozen right now is not just because of who might get Giannis. It's the second and third layer. This is going to be probably a very large multiplayer trade. And there might open up opportunities for third, fourth, fifth, even fifth teams to get in on this. Let me give you an example.
Okay.
A couple of years ago, we saw Dame Lillard as one of the big trades in the offseason. Dame Lillard goes to Milwaukee, and it ends up allowing Drew Holiday to move to Boston.
Right.
And that move, Drew Holiday ending up in Boston, ended up being impactful in the championship race. And so, like, you have a team like the Lakers, for example. The Lakers are sitting there with potentially a lot of salary cap space. Who's to say that this potential trade with Giannis doesn't open up an opportunity for them to get in and get a player that could potentially help them? So you've got a bunch of teams watching around the outside of the circle as Milwaukee tries to handle their business in the coming days.
What's the timeline we're looking on, like with that, Bobby?
Well, I think you have to have something concrete by the night of the draft, Malika. And I think certainly if you're looking at a team like Miami, who's at pick 13, and certainly they're in play with Giannis, I think if you're the Bucks, you want to have an idea, because you basically would be picking for the Heat in that situation. Or if you had the 13th pick, let's say something happens over the weekend, can you take 10 and 13, your other first, and potentially get into maybe the top 8 in this year's draft? So Brian hit it right on the head. There's a part 1 to this trade, and then there's going to be a part 2, 3, and potentially 4 as something else that could happen here.
Well, and to take off of what Bobby just said there, like if you're moving into the top 10, the reason why this is the draft that you want to be able to do that in is because of the plethora of talent.
Yeah.
You mentioned, I think Brian mentioned it, the Clippers at 5. That's where the draft really becomes fun, because you've got some guard play there where you're anticipating you're drafting a guard that can be your lead guard for the next decade. That's how deep and how talented this draft is at the guard position in particular. And so for the Bucks, if they're able to make a move because of Giannis and trade up, this has been a draft class that came into college basketball with a ton of hype.
Yeah.
And that hype was met with the production that it had on the court. Now they enter into the NBA draft with that same kind of hype. And the question is, will they deliver on that same kind of expectation like we saw from 1996, like we saw from 2003? That's where we're talking about this draft class in particular, and that's why it's going to be so exciting in Brooklyn next week.
Yeah, when you talk about the 1996 draft class, that's already setting a huge expectation. But if any class can do it, this class certainly has the talent to do the top 100 players. And we have a change at the top. So it's a good thing Jeremy Woo is here to explain this shift. It's a pretty big change here, Jeremy. What is that, and why are we seeing this move?
Malika, I moved Darren Peterson back to number 1 on my rankings, and now if you if you rewind back to October, I was very, very excited about Peterson. I saw him score, I think 24 points and a half, I believe, in an exhibition game in Louisville, 6 3-pointers. The guy is a major offensive talent. Now, his season, it is well documented, did not go the way he wanted. It was weird. He dealt with cramping. He didn't feel like himself. Clearly was not all the way there physically. As I've dug into this, I've spoken to NBA teams about it. Everybody feels comfortable with his medical. Teams are doing the same work as I am. They're trying to figure out what went wrong. Will he be able to get back to the level they saw him at in high school? So for me, I've come back to that conclusion. I feel comfortable with Peterson again. It's not really about AJ DeBonsa. Obviously, these guys haven't played basketball in a couple months in front of us, but I've settled with Peterson. I think he is the most gifted offensive player in the draft, and just from a shooting perspective, I mean, he's one of the best shooters for his age I've ever seen.
All right, so it's Darren Peterson that you're moving to the top of your 100 prospects here, and it was AJ DeBonsa. But just to be clear here, Jeremy, are you saying that he's number 1 in your mock draft? The top 100 is different, right?
Yeah, this is purely my rankings. Now, The mock draft will reflect what I think the Wizards will ultimately decide. And it is an interesting discussion. I know they are choosing between these two guys with AJ DeBonsa and Darren Peterson, and they've got a few more days to make up their mind. But it is a razor-thin margin between these guys, and it's always been that way. And I think that's what we've learned in the past week, is that's kind of where the Wizards are right now in this process.
Right, and this is the evaluation that is taking place as we speak. Jeremy Woo, thank you so very much for that insight. I know you've been talking to a ton of sources as you've been building out this list here, and one of my sources is college basketball analyst Sean Farnham, who, thank goodness, is here with us today, as well as our front office insider Bobby Marks, our senior reporter Brian Windhorst. Sean, Darren Peterson moving up into number one here. Again, of best prospects, not necessarily mocked to the Washington Wizards. What do you think of that change?
Well, I think you go back to when we were doing the interviews at the very start of this year for this show.
Yeah.
We sat down with AJ and we sat down with Darren. When I went to that practice in September, Darren Peterson blows you away with his ability to get to his spot on the floor, elevate up, and be able to finish. He is an assassin when the ball is in his hands at the offensive end of the floor. He had an extremely high usage rate this year. He says he wants to be a lead guard in the NBA. But with that usage rate, having only 1.5 assists per game, that would concern me a little bit.
Okay.
But from a talent-wise perspective, it was clear to see why he could be the number one overall prospect. And you ask him who his comps are, and one of them is Donovan Mitchell. And you go to the tape and say, okay, does he have some Donovan Mitchell into his game? Sure, he has the ability to utilize his upper body strength because it is an NBA-ready body. He bounces you off his shoulder, shifts your weight. Once he can shift your weight, he's going to create space to go ahead and finish. Does Donovan Mitchell do the exact same thing? There's no doubt that he does. He has a unique ability when he gets that mid-range jump shot to manufacture space, elevate up, and finish. And the same can be said, by the way, coming off of an on-ball screen situation, trying to attack downhill.
Yep.
Now, Darren Peterson says he got a little SGA. Well, if you got a little SGA, you've got to be able to snake through the defense, utilize your athleticism, be able to switch hands, draw fouls. He does all of those things very well. The difference in these two prospects, I think, a little bit is their mentality, their personalities. Now, Darren Peterson, when he first stepped to the mic for the very first time, said, I'm an antisocial loner. He's more introverted. There's nothing wrong with that,
Right.
but that's just who he is.
Sure.
AJ DeBonsa is more of an energy giver, more of a fountain, more
Right.
extroverted.
Already talking about his Hall of Fame speech.
Correct. So those two differences are a distinction that you can make between the two. But when you watch Darren Peterson play, and when he was out on the floor for Kansas, he put on a show in most nights. He scored over 20 points per game
The most by a
at Kansas, the
freshman in
most
Kansas, yeah.
above even Andrew Wiggins. And then you have AJ DeBonsa on the other side, by the way, who led the nation in scoring all season long, dropped 35 in his first NCAA tournament game. It's the spoil of riches
Right.
when it comes to this draft this year.
So what I'm hearing you tell me is this is an incredibly difficult choice. And from talking to teams who have these top draft picks, a lot of them, Brian, feel like whether they're getting a AJ DeBonsa or whether they're getting a Darren Peterson, both of these guys are number one picks, but only one actually has that pick. So are you hearing anything in terms of which way the Wizards are leaning here?
I am not. You know, and I am on the phone all day long. I'm in the information business. I'm talking to executives. I'm talking to agents of players in the top 10. I'm talking to scouts. And the Wizards have either done a wonderful job of holding their cards close to their vest, or there's still some level of uncertainty. And I'm going to frankly tell you that there's some level of uncertainty at 2. And I personally highly doubt that DeBonsa or Peterson slip past 2, but based on my conversations, I cannot rule out that the Jazz will at least consider Cameron Boozer from Duke at number 2. And so this is a situation where it's not just teams playing, strategy games, because when Danny Ainge is involved with the draft with a high pick, you have to be very careful trusting information. But this is also because these players are very, very closely talented together, and it's very hard to choose between them.
Bobby, what are you hearing?
I think, Malika, I think when you look, I think Utah is in a really strong spot right now. And I know they don't have the number one pick, but they're at number 2. I think the more you talk to teams, the more there is a consensus that there's 3 number one picks in this year's draft with AJ DeBonsa, Darren Peterson, and as Brian mentioned, Cameron Boozer. And if they stay at number 2, which I have a good sense, the likelihood is they will. They're going to get one of these elite level players with either Peter